You are listening to the Overthinker's Guide to Joy, episode 81. This is the one where I have the pleasure of interviewing one of my daughters, Morgan, on managing a quarter-life crisis. I had done an earlier episode about this subject when she was going through it, and this is sort of a follow-up of what happened after she put the work in and changed things in her life. Let's dive in. This is a podcast for overthinkers, overdoers, and overachievers who are tired of feeling overanxious and just want to feel better. I'm your host, certified life coach, Jackie DeCrenis. Hi there, and welcome back. Today, I have a special guest. She's special in a lot of ways. She's somebody very close to me. She's somebody I adore. I am super biased, but I would adore her even if she weren't related to me. It is my daughter, Morgan. And she agreed to come on the podcast today because I actually did an episode about Morgan about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. And it was an episode 54 called Managing a Quarter Life Crisis. And at the time, I didn't choose to identify her as my daughter because to protect her privacy and her journey, I spoke about her as if she was my client because at the time I was talking to her every day and advising her as best as I could as both her mom, her friend, and a little bit as a life coach. But what happened since then, after her quarter life crisis, is that she has had this remarkable transformation, this remarkable journey for the past year in terms of kind of hitting the reset button on her whole life. And I invited her, or actually she offered to me to be on the podcast today to talk about that journey and to talk about what it meant to reinvent your life at the quarter point. And hopefully we all do live to 100. But at 26 years old, she's here to chat about her journey, about what happened between ages 25 and now 26. And with that, I welcome my daughter, Morgan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan. I'm Jackie's daughter. Hi, Mom. Yeah, I thought of this because since I've moved from where I was a year ago, I started to try to make new friends. So I joined, as you know, pickleball leagues and softball leagues.
Wait. Before you even get into the new, just do a 1 minute, 2 minute recap of where you were a year ago, just in case they haven't listened to episode 54, Managing a Quarter Life Crisis. They may not know anything about you or quarter life or anything, and just talk about what your life was a year ago and where you've come.
Okay. So I'm not going to talk about anything before 25. I'll just talk about kind of where I was at 25. So at 25 years old, I was living in a city I hated. I was working a job I despised, and I was living with my boyfriend at the time, now my ex, who I had come to the conclusion was just not for me anymore. And when I say just not for me, I just want to be clear. He was not abusive. He was not toxic, but we were dating since we were 19. We were 25 at the point, and I had realized we had fully grown into two different people. You know, I loved his journey and I wanted to be on mine, and it was just not cohesive anymore. It just didn't make any sense.
Well, let me stop you for one quick second there, because that's an important. A lot of people might say, well, 6 years isn't like so long. 6 years is a lifetime when you're talking about 19 to 25. It is almost your entire adult life. And 6 years is a long time, but 6 years is a huge amount of time when you're 25. So
it was a fifth of my life.
Yeah.
It's a fifth of my life at that point. That's a long time for somebody. And at that point, you know, maybe this isn't for everybody, but we had talked about marriage. And we had talked about having kids and buying a home. And the more that we talked about that, because that's, I think, a natural thing for a young couple to do, the more I thought to myself, oh, this isn't going to work. I can't see myself with this person getting married, buying a home, having children. And I especially can't see it working this job and living in this city that they loved. So I need to remove myself from the situation. And that was apparent because I can't change the city. I don't want to change this person, and I need to change this job, but all three of them weren't working. Mm-hmm. So I kind of take a stick of dynamite and blow it up and start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, because I was 25 and because I had family support and because I am in therapy, it just kind of struck me like, okay, this is a very scary thing that's about to happen, but that needs to happen. And we're going to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a big, bold move at any age.
At any age. And there are people, and the reason why I came on today is because back to kind of what I was saying in the beginning is, and I'll talk about where my life is now, but when people say, what brought you to this city, this new city I'm living in? And I say, oh, well, in the same week, which really was the same week, I quit my job, broke up with my boyfriend, and moved across the country. And no matter what age I tell whoever, asks me this random question, which is a normal get to know you question, they go, I'm sorry, what? And I go, yeah, this is something, I did. I know it's kind of crazy. And they go, either I could never do that, or that's a bold thing to do, or good for you, or wow. And at first I was really embarrassed about it. I remember telling you, you asked me like, can I talk about this on my podcast? This is an inspiring story. We don't know where we're going to be a year from now. And I didn't, I was embarrassed because I was like, well, is this giving up? Is this, me feeling crazy? Is this, brave and independent? And at the end of the day, it's sometimes just necessary when you have the ability to be able to do that. I didn't have children. I didn't own a home. I didn't even have a car. So at that point, when I kind of looked at everything in my life and I said, I'm not happy in so many important places. What can I do to change that? Oh, I can change all three. Let's change all three. Let's completely shift the environment. And I think that's a really important lesson for anybody in their life. Obviously those scenarios change when you have children, I think, and when you own a home and, there's certain things weighing you down, but then there's a lot of things that don't weigh you down and that you can start over. And it is a big risk. It's a huge risk. I took a big one. Luckily, it worked out. I have a job I love now that I got a week after I quit my other job. And I can't say that's going to be the same for everyone. I'm in a place that is much better than the place I was living in. Physically, I mean the environment. And I'm in a new relationship that has been so wonderful and loving. And I've taken a lot of lessons from the old one that I know, okay, here's the steps I don't repeat, or here's the things I bring now that don't come up 5 years later. And then I have a crisis and call my mom and have to start over again. Because this isn't my plan forever, is to, keep blowing up my life and moving to new cities and start new jobs and have new relationships. You kind of get one or two or one every 25 years, I would say, to kind of do this. Because then if you're doing it over and over again, then it's a pattern, right? But sometimes it is important. And sometimes it is risky and something that, it takes hearing someone else's story even to say, you did that, I can do that too.
Yeah. So talk about the journey. So first you had to acknowledge that you were unhappy, which was really hard because, and I'll just correct your math. You said it was a fifth of your life. It was actually, ironically, a quarter of your life. 6, divided by 25 is closer to.
So yeah.
But no, I just think it's ironic. It's only ironic. I don't mean to correct your math, but it's ironic only that it's a quarter life crisis and it was a quarter of your life and it was all of your adult life. So it's a whole and a quarter and it's all the things. And it doesn't really matter. It's just, there's just so much attached to those particular 6 years. That's because it's such a big journey from sophomore year in college to, 25 years old living on your own. But just talk about like your emotional journey and then like the actual steps you took. So I imagine the first part was admitting I'm not happy, right?
That was definitely the first part. The first part was, again, it's 3 big things, right? It was my environment, my job, and my relationship. So I felt like there was no escape. And actually the first thing I did, I first started noticing this. I gained a lot of weight. And there are people that gain weight and wear it well. I had multiple people tell me in my life, I look like I've ballooned. And that's not to be funny. I truly was inflamed. My body had so much cortisol from the stress that I was taking in and not telling people because I was embarrassed to say, I don't like my boyfriend anymore. I don't like the place I'm living and I don't like my job because there are so many people, I had this kind of self-doubt of, well, there's so many people that don't have a job and there's so many people that can't live in these places. I was living in a really big city and there's so many people that aren't in relationships. And again, my boyfriend wasn't abusive. So, okay, well, he's not abusive. He's a good guy. He's just not right for me, but maybe we can work on it. So first it was a lot of negative self-talk. And it took actually a year beforehand. A friend of mine came to visit me and she sat me down. I was telling her about my life and I didn't see this friend very often. And she was a friend from college and I adore her. And she saw me and we sat down and she was like, just, tell me how you were. And then all of a sudden it was an hour of me crying and telling her, I am extremely unhappy. Mm-hmm. And she said, you have to leave. And I said, I don't know how. And she said, I'm not saying you have to leave tomorrow, but you have to start making a plan. It took me about a year because I didn't have family close by. There are people that can pick up their stuff and go to their parents' house 20 minutes away. That is a great start. I didn't have that option. I also didn't have a lot of money. So I was working this job because that was my only option. If I quit, where was I going to get the money to go somewhere? I was very close with my ex's family. So I didn't want to leave them. We had a dog. I didn't want to leave her. Those are all things that kept me down and kept me what I felt stuck. Mm-hmm. So it was a year of thinking about this. I started to exercise. That was a huge first step. Mm-hmm. I finally decided I was going to exercise for the first time in my life. I'm not athletic. I didn't know where to start. I literally just started walking on a treadmill. That was it. That was the only thing I did for months. And then I started watching workout videos. And it was my 1 hour a day because I also worked from home with my ex in the same apartment. So it was truly like I couldn't see out of the shield. I started walking and it was my 1 hour a day to clear my mind. And that was my time to just think or call my mom, and talk and be alone. And while moving my body and while clearing the cortisol out of my body. Mm-hmm. So I slowly started to lose weight. And then once I started to lose weight and once I started to literally sweat it out, mm-hmm. I started making those plans. And then it took me, the reason why actually I kind of hit a wall was at my job. I felt so, and I don't recommend anyone doing this. I felt so dumb. My boss made me feel so just dumb. He made me feel really stupid, which no boss should ever do to anybody. No one is stupid, but sometimes there's a lack of communication and it just doesn't work. And so I went to my doctor and I got an Adderall prescription because I thought I couldn't stay awake. I couldn't figure out what he was saying. I wasn't paying attention enough. And I tried one Adderall and I truly went through a tailspin where I had to stop working early. I had told them I felt sick that day. I had to stop working. I went into the lobby of my apartment and I called my therapist. And I said, I'm having an Adderall attack. And I realized I am so unhappy and I hate my job and I hate where I am and I hate my boyfriend and all of this needs to change. And it took me calming down. And he said, okay, let's start making a plan. And he said, the first thing you need to do is call someone you trust that you can stay with for a while. And so I called my sister, your daughter, your older one. And I said, this is what's happening. After this was the next day, I said, this is what's happening. I've made this decision. I'm going to leave my partner. I'm going to leave this city and I'm going to quit my job. And I need your help to just hold my hand. And she said, come on down. We got you. This is a safe space. So number one is finding that safe space, whoever it is, a friend, a family member, making sure that I had a hand to hold just for a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, I, again, finally told my boyfriend at the time, and I said, it was one night while watching TV, we were getting ready for bed. And was it the greatest time? No, but it's never a good time to break up with somebody, I would say. And I said, I'm not happy. I'm not happy here. I'm not happy with my job. And I'm not happy with you. We are growing into two different people. We don't even like doing the same things anymore. The only thing holding us together is this dog. I have to go. And within the week, I had a safe space of people in that city I was living in. They took me in while I was kind of packing up all my stuff. I packed up all my stuff. It was a lot of hard goodbyes. He begged me to stay. I stood strong. I called my mom, to make sure that she had my back and she had my full support the entire time. And I made an exit plan. Mm-hmm. And I had a team of people behind me. And that was hugely helpful. That was the most important thing out of all of this. Because if I didn't have my team of my mom and my sister and my friends, I don't think I could have done it. That was
So then you arrive on another coast. You were on the East Coast. Now you're on the West Coast in a from one big city to another big city, living with your sister, got a new job, and then you're still pretty much starting over, right? You've got a suitcase full of clothes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're everything from buying a desk to work from to, figuring out your transportation because at the time you had sold your car, to having to give up your dog because the time you couldn't transport your dog across, and that was the agreement you had with your ex-boyfriend. Mm-hmm. So now you're in a new job in a temporary second bedroom of your sister's apartment, and you're starting over. New friends, new everything. So just talk through, like, once you got the job, once you knew you had a place to live for a few months, what was the next important thing for you?
Well, first I want to clarify that I had the place to live. The reason I got the job was the week before I had broken up with my boyfriend and my job at the same time, I had rage applied to a bunch of companies. So what rage applied means, I don't know if you know this, is I literally on working hours, which is not really like a great suggestion, but my boss had made me so angry at this point that on the work day, I had started applying to every job I could find. Mm-hmm. And I got an interview and I got hired at this mm-hmm. amazing company mm-hmm. that I never thought I could be working for. Mm-hmm. And then I broke up with my boyfriend, was moving across the country. And I said, I'm going to be moving to this new place. And they said, that's fine. You're 100% remote. So, but first I found the place and the job just happened to fall in line. Mm-hmm. But if I didn't have this job, I know I would have come here and would have had to go find one immediately. That was never, mm-hmm. there was never a handout of like, here's money to live on. I just want to make that very clear. And I was very grateful to be able to find a job that I still love. Mm-hmm. So I land, I'm here, and, I'm confused. Mm-hmm. I'm calling you, my mom, every day, which we talk about once a week, maybe twice, but it is every day, if not twice a day, if not 3 times a day of mm-hmm. like, well, this is how I'm feeling now. And this is what's mm-hmm. going on. And I don't think I can tell anyone. And what do I tell people? And what if people see my Instagram story? And then what happens? And it's a lot of coming to face of like, what did I just do? Mm-hmm. A lot of my friends were on the East Coast. So I had given up a lot of access to my friends. Mm-hmm. And actually something I started doing, which you told me for years, which was to journal. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I journal, sometimes I just get distracted typing mm-hmm. or my hand hurts writing. So what I mm-hmm. actually started doing, which I still do, which has been extremely helpful, and I suggest to anybody who's like, I don't want to type or write, is I took out my phone and I started recording myself mm-hmm. as if mm-hmm. I was on a podcast and just mm-hmm. talking. Mm-hmm. And there's, even if it's the same word over and over again, if it's me crying, if it's me laughing, it's me telling a joke, mm-hmm. and there's recordings for 5 minutes or an hour. And that was hugely helpful because I felt like I could say whatever I wanted out loud and mm-hmm. I could talk it through with myself. Mm-hmm. I felt like I wasn't bothering anyone, which I knew I never would. And my friends were extremely supportive and they all knew what was happening. And you were supportive, and my sister and my other family members, and they were all checking in on me. But there's still, and I think everybody deals with this, the self-doubt of like, I'm bothering them, or especially when I'm taking resources, I'm using their time. So taking out that recording and even holding the phone in my ear as if I'm talking to somebody mm-hmm. and just mm-hmm. letting out whatever the mishigas is, mm-hmm. as we say in Yiddish, of just like, ugh, mm-hmm. and then just finishing it and going, okay, that felt really good. And then you can delete it, you can listen to it, you can leave it on your phone, whatever. And that was hugely helpful. Mm-hmm. I also went back to my roots when I first moved here, and my sister let me borrow her car for the first couple of weeks because she had gone on a trip. And I started walking dogs in between the time that I was waiting for my job to start mm-hmm. and getting here mm-hmm. and having almost animal therapy. It first off helped me with the issue of not having my dog anymore, mm-hmm. who I was extremely close with and raised from a puppy, and seeing a dog every day and walking it and knowing it has a home. So that was great. And even just earn money, but it really wasn't about the money. And I still do that today. And mm-hmm. I actually bought a car recently. I didn't have a car for the first year of living here, but I bought a car recently so I could get back to that. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not about the money. It is about truly going and seeing an animal. And sometimes they're not the best dog, but sometimes they are. And sometimes mm-hmm. they're just okay. And it's also, mm-hmm. again, exercise, the getting outside, the getting to know my new city. Mm-hmm. That was all amazing. And I've given that to a lot of people who feel stuck mm-hmm. is to start walking dogs. Because the therapy that's in that of like having that alone time and forcing yourself to get up and walk mm-hmm. is hugely beneficial. Mm-hmm. So from there, I'm living with my sister and her girlfriend. now fiance. I'm starting my new job. And yeah, they have a bed for me and that's it. So I need a desk. I need a dresser. I need to put away my clothes. I have no money. I have none. And again, I have no handouts and I don't want any. So I bought a $30 desk from Target. I bought an old desk chair and a dresser off Facebook Marketplace. And I started my new job. And it was East Coast hours. So I still work 6 a.m. to 2:30 every day. And then afterwards, I had nothing to do. So I kept walking, even if I didn't have a dog to walk. I would walk miles and I would listen to music or podcasts or nothing. I'd walk in the rain. I'd walk in the sunshine. I'd walk in the cold. I'd walk in the heat. But I just kept walking. And that was hugely beneficial. And after about 3 months of living with my sister, I decided I need to go live closer to the city center. And I want to go live with roommates because I want to meet people. The only people I know here are my sister and her girlfriend, and they have their own social life. They introduce me to their friends and whatnot, but I'm a social butterfly. And I need to go just meet people to meet people to meet people. You know, as an adult, it's really hard to make friends, especially if your job is remote, which is something I found.
Well, that's why this is such an interesting interview, because I think there are so many young people and older people too, who post-pandemic either don't work in an office anymore or are in transition or have had a life change, whether it's a divorce or loss of a spouse or a job change, or they work remotely. And they're like, my whole social structure has changed because of this circumstance, one or more circumstances. And you're a great illustration of that. Moving to a new city, breaking up with your boyfriend, working remotely is like the trifecta of my social life is starting from scratch.
And I have no friends here. And that's the other thing. That was the big risk of moving to this new location is all of my friends were a train ride or a bus ride or a car ride away from on the East Coast. Now we're all a plane ride away. And that was really hard. That was a risk I knew coming here. And I thought, oh, I'll just friends. And I think as an adult, we're so used to making friends in a school environment, in a work environment, and then you have your work friends and maybe they turn into personal friends or just acquaintances or whatever. And then at the end of the day, you know, when I worked in an office job, I'd come home and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want new friends. I didn't want to go do things. Now with a remote job, especially being done at 2:30, I was lonely. That was a big part of it. The other thing I started doing, and I, you know, was ready after about a month, was start dating. And again, it wasn't dating. And I remember talking about this with you. It wasn't dating to like find the next one to get married and blah, blah, blah. You know, and I said on my dating profile, I'm new to the city. I'm looking for friends. And I even tried, there's you know, on an app called Bumble, and there's like Bumble Friends. And, you know, as my stepdad said, you know, it's a numbers game. So I would meet these guys, and a lot of them didn't want to be my friend, but at least it got me out of the house and it got me talking to people. And it also helped me, you know, start looking at relationships in a different way. Because it's the first time I went on a date in 5 years with a new person, which was also very scary, but something I was ready to do, which, you know, there's a lot of people after 5 years that aren't ready to date for a long time. I was. And that was something that I figured, okay, that's the easiest way to meet people is to start dating, especially in a new city. So I started dating and I had a bunch of funny stories from that. So at least it helped me, you know, got me out of the house, got me to do things, had a funny story, told my mom, told my friends, told my sister. And then I was also looking for new roommates. So I happened to find 2 lovely roommates. And after about 3 months with living with my sister, I said, you know, I think it's ready. I'm ready to move on and really adjust to the city and see how much I like it. That's not with the crutch of you. And she was fully supportive of that. And she helped me move. And I bought a mattress and a bed frame on Black Friday. And that was it. So I had my desk and my chair from my Facebook Marketplace. I had my dresser as well. And then a bed and a bed frame. I lived the simple life because I had nothing when I left. I couldn't take any of the furniture that we built together. I couldn't take anything. And again, I had no money. I'm 26, 25, nothing. So at the same time I had moved, I met my now boyfriend, who we will be celebrating 1 year as of November together.
Nice.
And he was also new to this city. And we had both met each other and both told each other on the first date, we're just trying to meet people. and then we fell in love. So, it just so happened to be that way. But we also started hanging out with each other because we liked spending time with each other's company.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we work so well together. And we also agreed that, we had both had come out of a relationship and we were looking to grow and be adults in a new city and try new things and make new friends. And so that also helped a lot. So here I am, this was August, I left. And in November, I had a new job, a new city, and a new boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And, who was to say that this would happen so quickly?
Then there was still the missing component, which was the desire to make friends. Because you've talked many times with me about it was great to be out of a relationship that you had both outgrown. You were sad about having to leave your dog back on the East Coast. You sort of filled that need as much as you could with dog walking and dog sitting and house sitting and things like that. You found a new place to live that you like. You found a new boyfriend that you've now almost celebrated a year with. You have a job you like. But then there's making friends in a new city, like you said, with working remotely. So what were the steps that you took to trying to meet people outside of your roommates and, of course, your sister and your now boyfriend?
Which is a lovely community. And for a lot of people, that's plenty.
But they all have their own lives too. So
they absolutely have their own lives. My boyfriend has a best friend here. My roommates have their friends and my sister has their friends. I didn't have this is my best friend. And so that was very hard. And I remember the new year of 2023, my New Year's resolution was to make at least one friend. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling my therapist this, and my therapist said, "What's stopping you?" And I said, I work remotely. My roommates have their own friends. My sister has her friends. He goes, "I know there's ways and possibilities, and especially after COVID, that people are getting together in groups. We just have to find it." I said, "Okay." The first thing I did was Google adult sports leagues. And I want to go back.
Which is hilarious because of the three girls, of my three daughters, you're the only one who didn't like athletics growing up.
Correct.
Hilarious. Okay.
Yeah.
So you Googled adult sports league.
And as I mentioned before, I started exercising when I was really stressed out. I had never exercised before. I had joined a gym, and I remember telling you in the beginning, I joined a gym in January as well, and I started there. First, I want to start there. So I joined a gym, and you had said, "Oh, that's great. I made so many friends at the gym in the 80s."
Right.
And I go, well, yeah, nobody talks to each other. And I remember you being like, "What are you talking about? Everybody talks to each other at the gym." And I was like, "No, because everybody wears headphones now." Mm-hmm. And it was one of those realizations of like, oh, everybody is in their own little zone. Mm-hmm. And like, if you talk to somebody, they're going to be like, "Why are you talking to me? I'm busy." Mm-hmm. That's their time to be alone.
Mm-hmm. So or play on their phones or listen to music or whatever. I think in the 80s we had Walkmans. So like bad headphones, people, any excuse to, rip them off your head and like actually talk to a human being. And gyms were a great place to meet people in the 80s. So yes.
Yeah. Now it's because we're, and that's a lot of people's complaints too, is, we're so dialed into our phones. And we also feel like we have to make a bunch of friends and go out all the time because we have this, and I can go about that for later, but we don't need to talk about that right now. But just like this social life online versus in person. So people at the gym, they still don't. I've been at this gym now for 10 months and people still don't talk to each other. So making friends at this specific gym that I go to is not an option, unfortunately. So I started the gym and then I Googled adult sports leagues, which is hilarious because I am the least athletic person in my family. I still am, but I said, you know what? This is a place where people can't be on their phones. We have to be on a team. We have to talk to each other and it's pretty cheap. So I signed up for softball for the spring. It didn't start till April, but I was really excited and it was a step. And I joined a softball league and it was great. And I didn't make any close friends, but it got me out of the house every Sunday. I saw the same people. I got to know them. I got to, they knew my name. It was a familiarity and it was a community. And it was a step to community. From there, I joined a crafting group in the park. Again, no real takers at that point. And then I also joined a pickleball league, which I have successfully gone into a second season with. I really like the people there. Thank you. We're on the next step to a serious relationship, me and my pickleball league. and it's great. And actually from the crafting group, there was a group chat and I hadn't gone in a while. And a girl had reached out to the group and said, I'm Jewish and looking for friends. And there is a Rosh Hashanah service. This was only about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, would anyone like to come? And I was like, me, I'm a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a new friend and
Mm-hmm.
we had a lunch together and now we're going to a party together this weekend. And it took a while. I'm not going to lie. So this is now October and I moved here in August of last year. So it took a little over a year, but I finally do have a friend
Mm-hmm.
that I am doing stuff with outside of my boyfriend and my sister. And of course, I'm close with my roommates and that's wonderful too. But it's taken a while, but I have started to build that community. But it
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of steps. It took a lot of me literally going outside of my comfort zone of
Mm-hmm.
joining a sports league
Mm-hmm.
to find people.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the first one didn't really work out that great.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about, again, taking risks.
Yeah. Well, I want to commend you because what you've done is very brave. And while it felt like you were ripping your world apart, really what you were doing was remodeling it. And it's kind of a reframe, right? So we sometimes have to take down to build it back up. And I think that's what you did. You were like, this house, meaning yourself, needed a remodel, a rework. And you were willing to take it apart to rebuild it. And you did a really, really nice job. And I know you're still on the path, right? I mean, you're still, it's
well, the whole, that's life. Life
right.
is path we have to constantly build. And I knew, in a year or 5 years, it's never going to be complete.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something that's also important in this journey is knowing that this is a continuous self work. Yes. And that's something that I talk about with my current boyfriend a lot is, we've watched each other grow in the last year because this is a new city to us and we're trying to make friends and we're trying to excel in our jobs. And we're also trying to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that we made in our past relationships. And that takes a lot of growth and that takes a lot of commitment. And it also takes a lot of self-reflection, which I think a lot of people miss sometimes, and checking in with each other and ourselves to make sure, are we happy? What can we change if we're not? What can we do for each other to lean on each other for support? And those things are so important in any stage in life.
So I think, you are a good role model for what is possible when people think that they're at the end of a road. And I obviously, that's what I do for a living, right? People are at the end of their rope with a job or with a relationship, or sometimes both, or an environment, or they're tired of being unhealthy, or they're tired of carrying weight, or they're tired of drinking too much or spending too much or whatever they've had enough of. And they fear that if they give up the crutches, right, whatever is self-soothing, and it's different for everyone. It's certainly, there's not like a recipe that everybody overeats or overdrinks or overspends or overgambles or over whatever's. But there's so much fear in letting go of the very thing that's keeping you down, because there's comfort in the devil, And that's a metaphor, obviously, not just for an individual, but a circumstance. And you were willing to let go of all the devils or knew to explore the possibility of maybe there's something better for me, or maybe I can reinvent myself, or if I make mistakes, that's okay, but I won't stay stuck. And I think that's the reason why you're here today. But I think that message is so important at 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75. You're not stuck. Stuck is a frame of mind. And you don't have to blow up your whole life to get unstuck. You can change one thing. I mean, I just love what you talked about, recognizing that you had all this cortisol in your body and it was making you heavy and making you tired and making you feel unhealthy.
Rest.
And you simply just started walking. Just if you had done nothing else except that would have been amazing. But it was beyond the walking. Once you started feeling better, you're like, now I need to admit that the job and the relationship isn't working. And the big sacrifice again was leaving the dog that you loved. And then once that was the only real thing left other than the unknown of where will I live and how will I figure it out. You just kept doing it, kind of one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. It was a huge risk, obviously. And I think everybody in my life knew that, but knew that that was kind of the only option. And I think a lot of the times too, it's leaving the and it's also not being afraid to fail, because this could have been a major failure. I mean, I could have been sitting here and quit my job again and not have founded a new boyfriend, hated the city I've been living in, and I would have had to try again, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. People say
okay
you
too.
you learn more from your failure than your success.
Oh, 100%. Because where I was at 25, I felt like a failure. I felt like I failed in everything I was doing was failing. And I thought, then what am I going to do? Because the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a new result. And I felt crazy because I tried to find a new result and it wasn't working. And so it's having to start over again and expect that I may fail, but at least it's not the same thing I've been doing every day.
Kind of
and
amazing.
Here we are.
And here you are. So just to recap, because there's a lot to unpack in that story.
There's a lot.
In hindsight, what would you say are the tentpole steps for someone making a change in their life? And even if it isn't an entirely new life, even if it's just a big thing in their life, what would you say are the baby steps to take for change, given the fact that you've done all the big ones in the last year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's a question that a lot of people get stuck with. And I'd say the first thing is to take, and what you tell me all the time, and it helps that I have a mother that's a life coach, but is to take a step back and say, what is not working? And write it down or speak it into your phone and take a moment to yourself, talking to anybody, just to yourself and say, what is not working? Is it the job? Is it the environment? Is it the partner? Is it me? Is it the food? Is it whatever? Once you recognize it, figure out, where can I get my support? Am I in therapy? Do I have a parent? Do I have a friend I trust? Do I trust my partner? If, the partner is not the problem, do I trust them to help me? Who can help me? Because it's finding support. It's finding somebody. We're humans. We're social creatures. And we sometimes need other people to hold us accountable. There's personal accountability, and that's really hard to hone. So sometimes it takes someone else checking in every day and going, hey, did we do that thing we talked about? How far are we along? So it's taking a step back, recognizing what's not working, finding support, and then taking it one step at a time. What's the first step to change it? Is it quitting your job? Or is it even having a meeting with your boss or speaking up for yourself at work? Maybe it's not even quitting your job. Maybe it's advocating for yourself. Maybe it's rearranging your apartment and throwing trash out, and literally looking at your environment and going, I don't like what I'm doing. This isn't working. Let me Marie Kondo and just start over. Maybe it's you're in a relationship and you need to have a big conversation with them. And that's so scary. And even if it's not breaking up, but it's, I don't like this thing that you are comfortable doing. So we need to figure out a way that it can help me and you, that this is affecting me. And it's also, maybe it's within yourself. Is it your spending or your eating or your drinking, like you had mentioned? Where can you go to hold yourself accountable to not continue those patterns that are affecting your life negatively? And so I would say those are the biggest ones.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I think a lot of the time, I hear a lot of people making excuses, and I totally understand excuses are very helpful to make a crutch to not change your life. And I think a lot of the excuses are, I can't afford it, or I can't do it, or blah, 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 blah. Taking a mental step back or taking time by yourself and making a pro and con list, or finding somebody that supports you, even if it's, by the way, like a Reddit page, and there's a ton of people that go on anonymously and write their heart out and then just have people comment. And even if you delete the post or whatever, there are ways to help yourself
Mm-hmm.
that require no money
Mm-hmm.
and that require very little energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people just are scared of the risk,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay to take a risk and fail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the last step. That's what I would say.
It's awesome. Well, Morgan, obviously I love talking to you and do all the time, but I love sharing you with my audience. And it's a great story to hear a year later, someone who started over and has a much richer and, listen, lots of challenges ahead, lots of journeys ahead, and there's no there, right? We always talk about that, but you are on a new path and a path that makes you happy. And I'm proud of you. And I just love that you shared your story with my audience today. And thank you for your wisdom and your wisdom through experience and trust of yourself to be able to share that with others. And hopefully, even if there's just one little thing in your story that inspires somebody else, that's huge. So thank you.
Well, thanks for being my mom and being so supportive and awesome through this whole thing and listening to me cry and laugh with me and take those risks with me and holding me accountable. And yeah, I definitely couldn't have done this without you. Are you kidding? And not everybody gets a mom like you. So that is huge in its own right. So, if people can hire you to be their life coach, they can't hire you to be their mom, but at least you get a little piece of you. And I'm very lucky to have that. So I'm extremely grateful.
Thank you.
And after this podcast, your other daughter wants to say hi.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording, but I'm going to say bye for now. And I love you. And thank you for being here.
I love you, Mom. And we'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Overthinker's Guide to Joy. If you're enjoying these episodes, please subscribe or follow this podcast so you can always be in the know when the next episode drops. If you would like to learn more about working with me as a coach, you can connect with me through my website at jackiedegrenis.com. That's JACKIEDECRINIS.com.